I still remember the day I first met Alicia as if it were a page torn from a cherished novel. The autumn sun filtered through the golden leaves of a quiet park, casting a gentle glow around her. I was immediately struck by her effortless charm, a subtle warmth in her smile, and an ambition that shimmered in her eyes. At that moment, I was a young man with dreams too big to contain, unaware that our paths were destined to merge into a tale of love and loss. Our early days together were painted with the soft hues of shared laughter and whispered promises. We spent countless evenings beneath starry skies, speaking of our futures as if they were already written in the stars. Alicia's laughter was a melody that soothed my anxieties, and her passion for life gave me the courage to chase my own aspirations. We visited quaint coffee shops, strolled through art galleries, and planned adventures that spanned across distant horizons. Every moment was imbued with a sense of purpose, a shared belief that our love was the beginning of something extraordinary. In those halcyon days, I never suspected that behind Alicia's enchanting smile lay secrets she had carefully concealed. Her phone buzzed with messages at odd hours, and on occasion, I would glimpse her furtively glancing at it as if it held the answers to a mystery I was not yet meant to understand. At first, I dismissed these small inconsistencies as the quirks of a busy mind, a mind that was constantly weaving dreams of the future. But as time passed, a subtle unease began to shadow the bright promise of our relationship. It was during one quiet winter evening, when the world outside was blanketed in soft snow, that the first tendrils of doubt began to creep into my heart. I had returned early from a business trip and decided to surprise Alicia with her favorite tea and a warm embrace. Instead, I found her hunched over her desk, her eyes scanning what appeared to be a series of emails. The glow of her laptop illuminated her face, but something in her expression, a fleeting moment of tension, struck me as odd. I asked casually, "Everything all right?" expecting a light-hearted explanation, but her eyes darted away, and she murmured something about work. Over the following days, the pattern repeated itself. Late-night phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room, whispered conversations in hushed tones, and diary entries that seemed to hide more than they revealed. I began to wonder if my imagination was conjuring shadows where there were none. Yet, the nagging sensation that I was missing something vital persisted. As the weeks passed, I found solace in the detailed recollections of our happiest moments. I would spend long hours reminiscing about our adventures together. The way Alicia's eyes sparkled when she talked about her dreams, the quiet moments we shared watching the sunset over the city skyline, and the plans we made for a future full of promise. But each memory was now tinged with a bittersweet undertone, as if the very foundations of our shared dreams were slowly crumbling beneath me. The turning point came unexpectedly. One evening, as I was tidying up our shared study, a stray envelope fell out from between the pages of a book. Its embossed seal was unfamiliar, and my heart began to race as I realized it contained several printed emails. The sender was a name I did not recognize, and the content was cryptic, a mix of affectionate phrases and plans that hinted at clandestine meetings. My hands trembled as I read the lines over and over, trying to dismiss them as a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew the truth was far more painful. I decided to set aside the envelope and maintain my daily routine. Yet, every time I caught a glimpse of Alicia's profile on her phone or overheard her conversation in hushed tones on the other end of a call, the evidence mounted in my mind. I began to keep a private journal, not only of my memories and feelings, but also of every anomaly that might reveal the truth. I recorded the times of her calls, noted the peculiarities in her behavior, and secretly photographed receipts from restaurants we hadn't planned to visit. The methodical act of gathering evidence became my way of fighting back against a betrayal that I could not yet fully accept. It was during these solitary investigations that the shadow of a name began to emerge. Daniel. A name that Alicia had once mentioned in passing, as if it belonged to a chapter of her life best forgotten. I found scattered references in her diary and in the digital footprints of her emails. Daniel was a ghost from her past, someone whose reappearance had ignited a secret passion that I had no place in. With every fragment of evidence I uncovered, the painful realization grew. My fiancée had been living a double life, carefully dividing her affections between our shared future and a hidden romance. As the evidence mounted, so did my inner turmoil. I oscillated between anger, sorrow, and a desperate need for clarity. There were nights I sat alone in our dimly lit living room, the silence broken only by the quiet hum of the refrigerator, feeling the weight of loneliness settle in. I would replay every conversation, every smile, searching for clues I had missed. The betrayal was like a slow poison, each drop a reminder that nothing was as it seemed. During this period, I found myself isolating from friends who once celebrated our union. I was haunted by the fear of being exposed as naive, or worse, complicit in my own downfall. Instead, I sought refuge in the written word. I started documenting everything: the explicit messages hidden on Alicia's phone, the timestamps of secret calls, and even the subtle changes in her demeanor. My once cherished memories were now interlaced with a bitter irony, a past where every smile and every whispered promise became a testament to the lie I had believed. It wasn't long before my internal battle began to manifest externally. I grew irritable over minor inconveniences, and the once warm atmosphere of our home grew cold and sterile. I avoided direct confrontation, not out of fear, but out of a need to compile undeniable proof. Every scrap of evidence, every covert photograph was a piece of the puzzle that I was determined to complete. The meticulous nature of my investigation brought a strange sense of purpose amidst the chaos of my emotions. In a way, the act of uncovering the truth became a catharsis, a means of reclaiming control over my shattered heart. In the quiet moments before dawn, when the world outside was wrapped in a deep contemplative silence, I began to piece together Alicia's past. Old letters, forgotten photographs, and hints dropped in offhand conversations revealed a life that was far more complex than I had ever imagined. Alicia had once been involved with Daniel, a man whose charm and allure had evidently left an indelible mark on her. Their history was filled with passion and regret, a past that she had skillfully compartmentalized, leaving me none the wiser. I remember one particular evening when I stumbled upon an old photograph hidden in a drawer. It was a candid shot of Alicia and Daniel, arms entwined in a moment of undeniable intimacy. The picture was a cruel reminder of what I had lost, and it ignited a fire within me, a burning need to expose the deception that had been allowed to thrive behind closed doors. The pain of betrayal was overwhelming, yet it was tempered by a resolute determination. I knew that I could no longer allow myself to be the victim of deceit. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that our love story was built on fragile foundations. Every laugh, every shared secret, every whispered promise was now under a cloud of doubt. I revisited every memory with a critical eye, seeking patterns and inconsistencies that I had previously overlooked. Our once happy home was now a stage for a drama that I had never intended to play, a tragedy of unfulfilled promises and broken trust. In the midst of this inner turmoil, I found solace in the quiet corners of the city. I would wander through deserted streets at night, the cool air a welcome contrast to the heat of my emotions. In these solitary journeys, I sought to regain my sense of self, piece by piece, moment by moment. The sprawling urban landscape became a mirror for my internal chaos, its labyrinthine alleys and secret parks a metaphor for the hidden corners of Alicia's life that I was only beginning to understand. It was during one such solitary walk that I paused outside a small, dimly lit cafe. I remembered how Alicia had once spoken of this place with a wistful smile, recalling afternoons spent here discussing dreams and hopes for the future. Standing in the doorway, I was overcome by a mixture of nostalgia and despair. The cafe, with its faded posters and soft jazz playing in the background, seemed frozen in time, a relic of a past that I was desperate to reclaim. As I sipped a bitter coffee, the weight of my discoveries pressed down on me. The bitter truth was inescapable. I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, and now the reality was too painful to ignore. Even as the pain threatened to consume me, I began to forge a resolve that would change everything. I realized that my journey was no longer just about the betrayal. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my identity, and my future. Every piece of evidence, every secret captured in my meticulous records, was a step toward liberation. I started to envision a future where honesty and self-respect triumphed over deceit. A future where the wounds of betrayal would eventually heal, leaving behind a stronger, wiser self. During long, sleepless nights, I would pore over the dossier I was assembling. The digital messages, the photographs of clandestine dinners, the mysterious bank transfers, they all painted a picture too damning to refute. I was methodical and determined, driven by a need for justice that extended beyond personal vindication. I wanted the world to see the truth, to understand that the betrayal of trust was an act that carried consequences. And in my heart, I knew that this was only the beginning of a long journey, a journey that would eventually culminate in a reckoning where I reclaimed every piece of my shattered soul. As days turned into weeks, the tension in our home grew, palpable. Alicia, once radiant and full of life, became increasingly distant. Her smiles were forced, her eyes clouded with secrets she could no longer hide. I found myself teetering on the edge of confrontation, my emotions simmering just below the surface. Every shared glance, every awkward silence was a reminder that the foundation of our love was crumbling before my eyes. Yet, I was not yet ready to shatter the illusion completely. Instead, I bided my time, carefully collecting every shred of evidence that could stand as a testament to her betrayal. I spoke to close friends who, with heavy hearts, confirmed their suspicions when I gently probed about Alicia's past. Some even recalled moments when Alicia had seemed lost in thought or appeared unexpectedly anxious on the phone. Each recollection, though vague, added another layer to the growing narrative of deceit. I began to prepare for the inevitable confrontation, not by lashing out in anger, but by constructing an indisputable case. I was determined that when the moment came, every guest at our engagement celebration would witness the truth laid bare. The idea of a public unveiling, while excruciating, became my beacon in the darkness. It was not merely about exposing Alicia, it was about reclaiming my sense of self, my dignity, and proving to myself that I was worthy of a love built on truth and transparency. In the weeks that followed, the city around me buzzed with its own life, oblivious to the silent storm that was raging within my walls. The autumn leaves had long since turned to winter's frosty white, and with each passing day, the chill in the air seemed to mirror the cold betrayal I felt deep within. Every corner of our home was haunted by memories of laughter and shared dreams, now twisted into painful reminders of a past that could never be reclaimed. I recall one evening when I sat alone in our living room, the soft hum of a distant television filling the void. Alicia had already gone to bed, and I was left with my thoughts and the heavy burden of evidence. I opened my journal and began to write, a litany of heartbreak and determination. Each word was a declaration, a promise to myself that I would not allow this betrayal to define me. I wrote about every lie, every stolen moment, and every secret that had been hidden behind a facade of love. It was as if I was purging my soul onto the pages, each sentence a step toward reclaiming the person I once was. As I wrote, a strange sense of calm washed over me. The process was painful, yet cathartic, a necessary prelude to the reckoning that lay ahead. I realized that the journey to reclaim my life was as much about healing as it was about revenge. The meticulous documentation of Alicia's duplicity had become a testament to my resilience, a tangible record of the battle I was fighting against betrayal and the dark specter of deceit. In the quiet solitude of those long nights, I began to see the duality of human nature. Love, in all its beauty, could also hide shadows, hidden desires, long-forgotten regrets, and secrets that festered beneath the surface. Alicia, with all her charm and ambition, had once embodied the promise of a radiant future. Yet beneath that veneer lay a tumultuous past that refused to be exorcised. The more I uncovered, the more I realized that our story was not one of simple black and white, but of countless shades of gray. where passion and betrayal danced a dangerous tango. The truth, though painful, brought with it an unexpected clarity. I no longer saw myself as a victim of circumstance. Instead, I began to view my investigation as an act of liberation, a necessary if painful step in rediscovering who I was and what I truly deserved. I started to reread old letters, revisiting moments when Alicia's eyes would soften as she spoke of dreams and future plans. Every word, every promise now resonated with a bittersweet irony. The realization was crushing. The love I had once believed in was built on a foundation of carefully guarded secrets. But amidst the sorrow, there was a spark, a glimmer of defiance that refused to be snuffed out. I began to plan not just for a confrontation, but for a reclamation of my own identity. I envisioned a day when I would stand tall in front of everyone we once called friends and family, armed with irrefutable proof of betrayal. That day, I hoped, would not only shatter Alicia's carefully constructed illusion, but also mark the rebirth of a man who had been forced to confront the darkest corners of his soul. By the time the day of the engagement celebration loomed on, the horizon I had become both archivist and avenger, a quiet observer of the unraveling of our shared past. My dossier, a collection of digital messages, secret photographs, and hidden receipts, was my constant companion. I had turned every sleepless night into a silent vigil for the truth, knowing that the moment of reckoning would demand nothing less than absolute clarity. I remember the final days leading up to the celebration with a mix of dread and resolve. Each morning I would wake before dawn, the cool air a reminder of the harsh reality that awaited me. In the mirror, I saw not the hopeful eyes of a man in love, but the determined gaze of someone who had been betrayed and who was ready to reclaim his life no matter the cost. On one particularly crisp morning, I sat at my desk with the dossier spread out before me. The evidence was irrefutable, a tapestry woven from threads of lies and half-truths. I traced each line with trembling fingers, committing every detail to memory. In that moment, I vowed that the forthcoming engagement celebration would be more than just a farewell to the illusion of our shared dreams. It would be a declaration, a public reclamation of my dignity, and a final farewell to the love that had betrayed me. And so, as I closed my journal and prepared for the inevitable storm, I embraced the paradox that had come to define my existence. I was filled with sorrow, yes, but also with a fierce determination. The betrayal had cut deep, yet in its wake it had revealed a strength I never knew I possessed. My life, once defined by the promise of love, was about to take an unexpected turn, a journey toward a future free of deceit, built upon the unyielding foundations of truth and self-respect. Love the depth of the characters. Can't wait for the next season. Mando and Grogu are iconic, epic storytelling. The day of the engagement celebration arrived with a crisp air that belied the turmoil bubbling within me. I awoke before dawn, the cool light of early morning casting long shadows across my room. Every detail of my plan had been rehearsed in my mind for weeks, each moment of preparation etched in my memory like a silent oath. Today was not only the day to expose Alicia's betrayal, it was the day I would finally reclaim my dignity and step out of the darkness of deceit into the blinding clarity of truth. In the hours leading up to the event, I moved through the motions of normalcy with a steady determination. I dressed carefully in a suit that had once been a symbol of celebration, a suit that now carried the weight of my resolve. As I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I caught a glimpse of the man I used to be, the hopeful soul who had believed in a love that promised forever. But that man was fading, replaced by someone hardened by truth and fueled by the need for retribution. At the venue, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Friends, family, and acquaintances mingled in the lavishly decorated hall, their laughter and chatter underscored by the soft strains of live music. The grandeur of the celebration was almost surreal against the backdrop of my inner storm. Every garland of lights and every elegantly set table was a reminder of what once was, yet also a prelude to what was about to unfold. I moved through the crowd with measured steps, greeting familiar faces with a polite nod and a practiced smile. Yet behind my calm exterior, my mind was racing. I recalled every sleepless night spent compiling my dossier, the clandestine photographs, the damning messages, the meticulous records of Alicia's secret trysts. Every piece of evidence had led me to this moment, a moment where the carefully constructed illusion of our love would crumble under the weight of truth. The hall was a vision of splendor. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, refracting light into 1,000 shimmering fragments. Ornate floral arrangements lined the entrance, and tables were adorned with soft, flickering candles. Guests moved gracefully, their conversations a gentle hum in the background. It was a scene straight from a dream that I had once shared with Alicia. Alicia, resplendent in an elegant gown that accentuated her beauty, moved through the room with an air of practiced grace. Her laughter sparkled like delicate music, and yet I could see an undercurrent of tension in her eyes. There was something distant there, a guarded expression that belied the joy of the moment. I had seen that same guarded look in private moments, when her phone would buzz or when her gaze would momentarily fix on the far wall as if searching for an escape. Now, surrounded by well-wishers and the opulence of the celebration, the facade was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. As the evening progressed, I found myself lingering near the audio-visual control room, a small, unassuming space at the side of the hall. There, my trusted friend Samuel was making final adjustments to the presentation I had prepared. His eyes met mine with a silent understanding as he nodded in acknowledgement of the unspoken plan. We had arranged for the slideshow to play at a prearranged moment, a moment when all eyes would be riveted on the screen and the carefully concealed truth would be laid bare for everyone to see. The moment came just after the dinner course had been served and as the guests settled into a brief lull between courses. I took my seat at the head table, my heart pounding in rhythm with the soft background music. I tried to steady my trembling hands, reminding myself that every piece of evidence was there to support my resolve. Across the room, Alicia sat with a poise that now seemed both fragile and forced. I could see the tension in the set of her jaw, the subtle tremor in her hands as she clutched a glass of champagne. It began with a simple command, a click of a remote that triggered the presentation. The large screen at the front of the hall flickered to life, and an image of Alicia appeared in a moment of captured vulnerability. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the slideshow advanced slowly, each slide more damning than the last. There were screenshots of explicit messages, timestamps of secret calls, and photographs taken in the dim light of clandestine meetings. Each image was a silent witness to the betrayal that had been hidden beneath layers of deceit. I watched as the truth unfolded on the screen, the evidence laid out in meticulous detail. The expressions around the room shifted from pleasant surprise to stunned disbelief. Some guests exchanged hushed whispers, while others stared at Alicia with eyes wide in shock. In that moment, time seemed to slow to a crawl. The soft strains of the background music faded into silence, replaced by the heavy pulse of a collective realization that nothing was as it seemed. Alicia's face transformed in real time, a mix of shock, disbelief, and a dawning horror as the images unfolded before her. The carefully crafted mask of joy and elegance shattered with every new piece of evidence. Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for an escape, but there was no hiding from the truth. The carefully orchestrated presentation was a revelation not only to the gathered guests, but to Alicia herself. The room, once filled with the gentle clinks of cutlery and polite conversation, was now a theater of silent judgment. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of betrayal and the finality of shattered illusions. I could see tears glistening in the eyes of some guests, their expressions a mixture of sorrow and disbelief. The public unveiling had laid bare a secret that had long been hidden away, and the impact was immediate and irreversible. Alicia rose unsteadily from her seat, her movements betraying an inner turmoil that could no longer be contained. She stumbled toward the periphery of the hall, as if the glare of public scrutiny had become too much to bear. Each step was laden with the pain of realization, a painful acknowledgement that every lie, every secret, had led to this irreversible moment. The whispers grew louder, and the atmosphere became charged with an electric mix of shock and quiet vindication. For a brief moment, time suspended as I watched Alicia vanish into the crowd, her figure a fading silhouette against the backdrop of opulence and shattered dreams. The evidence of her betrayal was now undeniable, a permanent scar on the tapestry of our shared past. And as the realization settled among the guests, I felt a profound sense of liberation, a bittersweet relief that the dark secret had finally been exposed. I stood slowly, my heart pounding as I took in the scene before me. The engagement celebration had transformed from a night of joyous celebration to a public reckoning, a moment when the masks of deception were stripped away and the truth shone in unrelenting light. In that moment, I realized that my journey was no longer just about reclaiming what I had lost. It was about affirming my worth, my dignity, and my right to a life defined by honesty and self-respect. In the hours that followed the unveiling, the hall descended into a tumultuous blend of shock and quiet introspection. Guests whispered in corners, their expressions somber as they processed the cascade of revelations. Some tried to console one another, while others simply stared at the screen as if it were a mirror, reflecting the darkest parts of human frailty. The atmosphere was heavy with the realization that betrayal, when uncovered, leaves scars that time alone cannot mend. I stepped outside into the cool night air, seeking refuge from the intensity of the scene inside. The city around me was still alive with its nocturnal rhythm, the distant hum of traffic, the soft murmur of voices, and the gentle glow of streetlights. In that moment of solitude, I felt the weight of my own transformation. The man who had once been consumed by the pain of betrayal was beginning to emerge anew. A man who had found strength in his suffering and purpose in his pursuit of truth. I wandered aimlessly for a time, my thoughts swirling like autumn leaves caught in a sudden gust of wind. Memories of better days mingled with the harsh reality of the present, each step on the pavement a metaphor for the journey I had endured. The night, with its quiet beauty and subtle promise of renewal, whispered to me the possibility of a fresh start. I realized that the agony of betrayal could be transmuted into the fuel for a new beginning, a life that was unshackled by the past and defined by the resolve to forge my own destiny. In the following days, the fallout from the engagement, celebration rippled outward, touching every corner of our once shared world. Alicia's absence was felt acutely by those who had come to know her, and the scandal became the subject of hushed conversations and painful reflections. I received messages of sympathy, of shared sorrow, and even of admiration for the courage it took to confront such a devastating truth. Yet amid the outpouring of support, I remained quietly focused on my own path, a path that would eventually lead me to healing, and ultimately, to a life reborn from the ashes of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, the memory of that fateful evening remained etched in my mind. The pain of the public revelation was undeniable, but so too was the sense of liberation that had come with it. I found solace in the simplest of moments: a sunrise over the city skyline, a quiet walk through a park where the leaves had begun to change, the gentle murmur of a conversation with a newfound friend. Each day offered a small reminder that life, despite its harsh twists and turns, continued to move forward. I began to rebuild my identity piece by piece. The hours once spent poring over Alicia's secrets were now devoted to self-reflection and to rediscovering the parts of me that had been buried beneath the weight of betrayal. I took long walks along the river, where the gentle lapping of water against the embankment served as a constant reminder of nature's endless cycles of renewal. In those quiet moments, I allowed myself to feel the sorrow for what I had lost, and to also embrace the potential for what I could still become. Friends who had once drifted away returned with quiet offers of support. I attended therapy sessions, where a compassionate counselor helped me untangle the intricate web of emotions that had taken root in my heart. Slowly but surely, I began to see that the exposure of Alicia's secrets was not the end of my story, but rather a painful, necessary turning point that would lead me toward a future defined by honesty, resilience, and hope. In time, I started to open up about my experience, not to cast blame or to dwell on the past, but to reclaim my narrative and to find empowerment in my vulnerability. I began writing again, long journal entries that chronicled not just the dark moments, but also the quiet victories of a man who was rediscovering himself. Every word on the page was a step toward forgiveness. First, forgiving myself for the pain of betrayal, and then, in time, forgiving a past that had forced me to confront the harsh realities of human frailty. I sought out new experiences with an open heart. I enrolled in a creative writing course, where the act of storytelling became a balm for my wounded spirit. The gentle encouragement of my peers and mentors reaffirmed my belief that life, even after the deepest cuts of betrayal, held the promise of beauty and renewal. The passion that had once drawn me to Alicia was now redirected inward, a passion for life, for creativity, and for building a future on the unyielding foundations of truth. One evening, several months after the engagement celebration, I found myself in a small, intimate cafe that had become my refuge. The dim lighting, the soft murmur of quiet conversations, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee provided a sense of comfort that I had not felt in years. As I sat by the window, watching the world go by, I reflected on the tumultuous journey that had brought me to this point. In that reflective quiet, I realized that the pain of betrayal had been both a curse and a catalyst, a cruel twist of fate that had shattered the illusions of a perfect love, but had also forced me to confront my deepest truths. I thought of Alicia and Daniel, a pair whose secret liaison had once defined my darkest moments, and I silently wished them a future of their own making. The past was immutable, and though the scars would remain, they no longer held the power to dictate my destiny. I opened my journal and began to write, each word a deliberate act of renewal. I chronicled the story of a man who had once been consumed by heartbreak, but who had, through the crucible of betrayal, found the strength to rebuild his life. I wrote of the painful yet transformative journey, a journey marked by loss, yes, but also by the discovery of a resilience that I had never known existed within me. That evening, as I closed my journal and stepped out into the cool night, I looked up at the sky filled with stars and felt an overwhelming sense of possibility. The universe, vast and indifferent, carried on its endless dance of light and shadow, and within that cosmic rhythm, I found my own resolve. The betrayal had taken so much from me, but it had also given me a precious gift, the chance to start over, to embrace a future that was entirely my own. And so, with the echoes of the past slowly fading into memory, I set forth on a new chapter. A chapter not defined by revenge or by lingering bitterness, but by the quiet determination to live a life of authenticity and courage. I had reclaimed my dignity, not in the moment of public humiliation alone, but in the gradual, daily acts of self-renewal that followed. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt the stirring promise of tomorrow. In the end, the reckoning was not merely an act of retribution, it was a rebirth. The shards of a broken love had been gathered, not to fuel a cycle of vengeance, but to build a new foundation on which to construct a future unburdened by deceit. The painful revelations of that fateful engagement celebration had given me the clarity to see that betrayal, though bitter, could be transformed into a catalyst for growth and self-discovery. Standing on the threshold of this new dawn, I realized that the true victory lay not in the exposure of a hidden affair, but in the reclamation of my own life. I had learned that the scars of betrayal were a testament to the battles I had fought, and a reminder that every wound, when embraced with honesty, could become a source of strength. With each step forward, I honored the past by choosing a future, defined by resilience, truth, and the unwavering belief that even in the wake of devastation, the human spirit could find the courage to rise again. And so, as the first light of a new day crept over the horizon, I smiled softly to myself. The journey was long and fraught with pain, but it had also been a journey towards self-realization and empowerment. The memories of a once cherished love were now woven into the fabric of my being, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as the impetus that had driven me to discover my true self. In that moment, I knew that I had finally reclaimed my life. The dark shadow of deceit had been vanquished by the brilliance of truth, and in its place, a future of boundless possibility awaited. A future built on the unyielding foundations of honesty, resilience, and the enduring promise of new beginnings. This concludes the final part of the expanded narrative. In this act of public revelation, the protagonist not only exposes the betrayal that once threatened to crush him, but also embarks on a transformative journey, a journey from the depths of heartbreak to the empowering light of self-rediscovery. The public reckoning becomes the catalyst for a life reimagined, where every scar is a badge of honor and every step forward a testament to the indomitable strength of the human spirit.